The scent of my mate was wrong. It was supposed to be pine and earth, my sanctuary. Tonight, it was poisoned with another woman's perfume, and the entire pack watched as my world ended. The harvest moon bonfire was a roaring beast of heat and sound, but Celine stood frozen at its edge. The first wrongness was the scent, a twist in the air. Ronan's familiar aroma of pine and damp earth, the scent she'd fallen asleep to since childhood, was tainted. Underlying it was a cloying, triumphant sweetness, night-blooming jasmine, Lyra's signature. Her stomach turned to stone. Laughter and howls echoed, but she heard only the frantic thrum of her own heart. Whispers, sticky and cruel, had followed her all evening. Wolfless Omega, hollow. How can she anchor an alpha like Ronan? She'd clung to the fragile promise of their pre-bond, the silvery mark on her wrist, a promise from the goddess. It was supposed to be unbreakable. Then she saw them. Pressed against the gnarled bark of the great oak, at the edge of the firelight, Ronan's powerful form caged Lyra's slender body. His hands, which had cupped Celine's face that very morning, were tangled in Lyra's silver hair. His mouth was on hers in a deep, possessive kiss, a claim he had never fully given to Celine. The world didn't just tilt, it cracked open. The pre-bond on her wrist flared with white-hot agony before snapping. A silent scream ripped through her soul, the phantom pain of a wolf she'd never been able to shift into, howling in despair. Ronan pulled back. His blue eyes, once a summer sky, met hers and hardened into glacial ice. No remorse, only cold dismissal. Lyra smirked, rubbing her cheek against his chest, remarking him with her scent. "Celine," Ronan said, his voice flat in the sudden silence that had fallen around them. The pack was watching now, a ring of eager, pitiless eyes. "This isn't working. I need a real mate. A strong alpha needs a she-wolf who can run at his side, not this." His gesture encompassed all of her. Her quietness, her Omega status, her lack. "You promised," she whispered, the sound torn from a raw throat. Lyra's laugh was a bell of pure malice. "He needs heirs, Celine, strong, alpha-blooded pups, not barren air." The word barren hit like a physical blow, the ultimate failure. Ronan stepped forward, grabbing her wrist, forcing her pre-bond mark into the light. "I reject this bond," he declared, his alpha power vibrating in the air. "I, Ronan of the Blackwood Pack, sever all ties to Celine. She is wolfless. She is barren. She is nothing to me." The final snap was an execution. The silvery mark dissolved, leaving skin that felt scalded and raw. The pack link in her mind, always faint but present, went dark and silent. He released her, turning his back as he drew Lyra toward the fire. And then, as one, the entire Blackwood pack turned their backs on her. Alone in the cold dark, something in Celine didn't break, it ignited. A desperate, reckless plan born of old Omega tales and forbidden magic formed in her mind. To cauterize a wound this severe, you needed a fiercer fire. She had to bind herself to another, immediately, before the rejection scarred her soul forever. Without a backward glance at the life that had just discarded her, Celine turned and ran into the dark, lawless forest beyond the border. She was going to find a fire to burn away the dog's bite, even if it meant throwing herself into the jaws of a dragon. The lawless tavern reeked of desperation and stale violence, a pit of lost souls. I needed just one. My eyes found him in the darkest corner, a mounting of shadow where even the torchlight dared not touch, and I walked straight into the dragon's lair. The forest was a clawing, snapping beast. Branches tore at her dress and skin. Roots rose to trip her frantic flight. She ran not to anything, but from everything. The echo of Ronan's rejection, the cold press of the pack's collective back, the hollow, screaming void where their bond had been. The physical pain was a welcome distraction from the agony in her soul. She crossed the scent-marked border, the magic sizzling against her skin, a final pop. Now she was truly nothing, a rogue, prey. The neutral lands were colder, quieter, watchful. The old tales circled in her mind. To burn away a broken bond, you must light a new flame, a temporary tether, a claiming without claim. It is forbidden. It is your only choice. A grimy plume of smoke against the moon led her to it, the wayfarer's end, a timber-framed tavern slumped in a clearing. Light and ugly noise spilled from its windows. The air was a chaotic soup of scents, unfamiliar wolves, blood, ale, hopelessness. Celine pushed the heavy oak door open and stumbled into a wall of sound and hostile attention. Dozens of eyes swiveled to her. Conversations died. She smelled the blackwood on her own skin and her own distress, raw as an open wound. A few sneered, most looked away. Her heart hammered. Look, someone, anyone, just for a night. Her gaze swept over grizzled rogues, traveling mercenaries. None would do. Then her eyes adjusted to the gloom at the back. He sat alone at a rough-hewn table so deep in the shadows that they seemed to cling to him like a second cloak. A dark hooded mantle obscured his features, but it couldn't hide the sheer scale of him. He was built like a monument. His shoulders strained the fabric of his simple tunic. An untouched tankard sat before him. But it was his presence that stole the air from her lungs. A bubble of profound silence surrounded him. The raucous noise of the tavern did not touch his corner. It was as if sound itself was afraid to approach. And his scent, it cut through the tavern's stale miasma like a bolt of lightning through rot. Ozone after a storm, deep, cold earth, the sharp, clean, merciless air of a mountain peak. It was ancient, wild. It was dominance and solitude incarnate. Driven by an impulse she couldn't name, Celine moved toward him. The other patrons shifted out of her way, their eyes following her with a mixture of fear and awe, as if she were walking willingly into a predator's den. She stopped before his table. He didn't look up. "I need your help," she rasped, her voice dry. He remained perfectly still, but she could feel his gaze from beneath the deep cowl, an intense, unnerving weight, as if he were weighing her soul.
I woke in a bed of silk, in a room of stone and shadow, with the scent of a storm all around me. I wasn't in a tavern. I was in a fortress, and the dragon was watching me. The first thing Celine noticed was the silence, a deep, profound stillness that absorbed sound. The second was the scent. The tavern's sour miasma was gone, replaced by beeswax, dried herbs, and overlying it all that impossible scent. Ozone, stone, him. It seemed to settle directly into her bones. Her eyes fluttered open. She was lying on a mattress softer than any cloud, covered in heavy, cool silk. Panic lanced through her. She sat up. She was still in her torn, grimy dress, a pathetic contrast to the opulence surrounding her. The room was vast. Dark, polished stone walls hung with tapestries of epic hunts. A colossal fireplace crackled. The floor was thick with dark furs. Towering windows revealed a sky bruised with pre-dawn purple. This was a place of immense wealth and power. Her hand flew to her neck. Her fingers met not a scabbed wound, but a pattern of raised, smooth skin, an intricate scar. It tingled with a steady, low-level energy, a hum resonating deep in her chest. The ghost of Ronan was gone. The wound was filled, not healed, but occupied by this new, formidable presence. "You are awake." The voice came from the shadows near the fireplace, that low, gravelly timbre that had vibrated through her bones. The voice of the dragon. Her head snapped toward the sound. He stepped into the firelight. The hooded cloak was gone. The sight of him stole the air from her lungs. He was a king carved from the very mountain his scent evoked, taller, broader than she'd realized. His shoulders were a solid line of power beneath a simple black tunic. His dark hair was long, threaded with silver at the temples, tied back from a harsh face of brutal experience. It was not handsome like Ronan's summer day beauty. This was the raw, breathtaking majesty of a winter storm. A jagged scar ran from his right temple down across his cheekbone. But it was his eyes that held her captive, the same molten gold, glowing with their own light, intelligent, ancient, utterly merciless. Who are you?" she breathed, pulling the silk sheet up like a shield. He moved toward the bed, footsteps silent on the furs. He stopped a few feet away. "I am the man whose help you begged for, the stranger to whom you offered anything." The word hung in the air, heavy. "It was meant to be temporary," she said, voice shaking. "It's over. I can leave." "No." The single word hit her with the force of a physical blow, a statement of absolute fact. "The bond you initiated was not a simple tavern ritual, little one," he continued, golden eyes never leaving hers. "You took a spark to burn away a splinter, but you placed that spark in the hands of an inferno. The bond holds. My wolf has accepted it. He has accepted you." Her blood ran cold. "Your wolf? But no one's wolf would accept a wolfless Omega, a barren she-wolf." A flicker of danger sparked in his eyes. "My wolf is not like those of lesser alphas. He cares for strength. He senses a strength in you that you do not even know you possess." He took another step. "As for who I am Kaelin Thorne." The name meant nothing at first. Then fragmented whispers pieced themselves together. Thorne, the royal house. Kaelin, the Alpha King, the reclusive, brutal monarch of all the northern territories, the wolf who had ruled for 50 years without a mate, rejecting every high-born she-wolf presented to him. The world tilted. The silk sheet felt like a shroud. The luxurious room became a cage. She had run from a pack alpha and thrown herself into the den of the alpha of alphas. "No," she whispered. "You're the king." "I am," he confirmed, expression unchanging. "And, by the old law, a bond freely offered and accepted by the Alpha King is not temporary. It is absolute. You are bound to me, Selene of no pack." "I am not of the Blackwood pack," she snapped. "They cast me out." "They did," he agreed, gaze softening almost imperceptibly. "And in their foolishness, they discarded a treasure they were not worthy of. Their loss." His eyes swept over her. "You have a new pack now. You are under my protection." "Protection?" She laughed, a broken sound. "This is a prison." "A gilded one, perhaps, but a prison holds someone against their will. I am not holding you. The bond is a bond you sought." He was right. The logic was as cold and inescapable as the stone walls. This was a cage of her own making. The weight of her desperate act crashed down. Public humiliation traded for royal imprisonment. A servant entered silently, placed a tray of food and tea by the fire, bowed to Selene and left. "Eat," Kaelin commanded gently. "You need strength." "I'm not hungry." Childish defiance. He walked to the tray, poured a cup of tea and brought it to her. He didn't offer it. He simply stood, holding it, waiting. The silence stretched. Defeated, she reached out a trembling hand and took the warm cup. Her fingers brushed his. A jolt of pure energy shot up her arm, startlingly intimate. She took a sip. "What do you want from me?" Her voice small. "For now, I want you to rest, to heal, to understand that the world that hurt you can no longer touch you here. Ronan cannot touch you. Lyra cannot mock you. Here you are safe." The word safe was so foreign, so craved, it almost broke her. "And after?" she pressed. "When I'm healed, am I to be your pet, your Omega slave in a castle?" A low, furious growl rumbled in his chest. The cup in her hand rattled. The predator was there, just beneath the surface. "You will never be a slave," he bit out, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, golden eyes flaring. "You are the mate of the Alpha King. You bear my mark. Anyone who dares disrespect you will answer to me with their life." He reached out, gently cupping her jaw. His touch radiated power. "I have spent a lifetime ensuring no bond could be forced upon me. I swore I would never take a mate. I built a fortress of solitude around this throne." His gaze was intense, almost feral. "And then you, a broken little bird with a storm in your heart, walked into a rogue's tavern and tore it all down with a single plea." He leaned closer, his scent enveloping her. "You are not my prisoner. You are my queen." Before the impossible words could settle, the great wooden doors swung open. A man in formal attire stood there, his face pale. "Your Majesty, forgive the intrusion. The news has spread. The scent of the royal bond is on the wind. The council has been convened. They demand to see her."
Kalen did not turn. His molten gold eyes remained locked on Celine, but the brief warmth vanished, replaced by the chilling glint of a monarch interrupted. A low, dangerous growl rumbled, making the very stones seem to vibrate. The advisor, a silver-haired wolf named Lord Valerius, flinched, bowing lower. "They demand?" Kalen's voice was deceptively soft, yet carried the sharp edge of honed steel. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Forgive my wording, Your Majesty," Valerius stammered, gaze fixed on the floor. "They urgently request an audience. The alphas of the inner circle are gathering. They say a bond with an unknown is a threat to the stability of the northern territories." The unspoken insult hung thick. A bond with a wolfless Omega, a nobody. Celine shrank back. She had traded pack judgment for royal judgment. The mark on her neck itched under the scrutiny of unseen, hostile eyes. Kalen's bum stroked her jaw once, a possessive, grounding gesture, before he pulled away. He turned his head slowly, fixing Valerius with a look of such cold authority the old wolf visibly paled. "The stability of my territories is my concern, Valerius. Tell the council I will meet them at midday, not before." "But, Your Majesty, they are insisting." "And I am commanding." Kalen's voice dropped into a register of pure, unassailable power, the Alpha King's command. It was a force of nature. Valerius's mouth snapped shut. He bowed nearly to his knees and backed out. The silence that fell was charged. Celine's hands trembled. "They want to see the freak," she said, words brittle. "The wolfless Omega who dared taint their royal bloodline?" Kalen turned back, the glacial fury replaced by something complex. "They want to see the woman who accomplished what no Alpha's daughter ever could. They want to see the one who holds my bond. They want to destroy me. Let them try." The words were a vow of violence. "The woman who wears my mark is to be revered." He gestured to a wardrobe. "Bathe, dress, eat. I will return." He started toward the door. "Wait." Her voice was stronger. He paused, hand on the iron latch, looking back. Why? Why me? You're the Alpha King. Why would your wolf accept a bond with nothing? Kalen was silent, his broad back to her. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, stripped of command, leaving something raw. Because for the first time in a century, my wolf was not met with ambition or lust for power. It was met with pure, honest desperation, with a pain that mirrored his own solitude. He looked over his shoulder, his golden gaze piercing her. He looked at you and did not see an Omega. He saw a survivor. He recognized a kindred soul. He left, the door closing with a final thud. Pain that mirrored his own solitude? The ruthless king was lonely? The idea was preposterous. Shakily, Celine slid from the bed. She bathed in opulent splendor, scrubbing at the memory of Ronan and the tavern. It was futile. The mark remained. She dressed in the simple, practical clothes laid out, dark green wool tunic and trousers. She ate, the simple act of nourishment a small rebellion. When Kalen returned, he found her standing by the fire, back straight, hands clasped. She had brushed out her long dark hair. She looked less like a victim and more like a woman steeling for battle. He, too, had changed. He wore a tunic of black leather reinforced with steel plates. A heavy sword with a wolf's head pommel was at his hip. He was dressed for war. "You are ready," he stated. "I am not one of your subjects to be presented for approval. I will not be paraded." A ghost of smile touched his lips. "Good. You will not be presented. You will be introduced. There is a difference." He held out his arm. "Walk beside me. Lift your head. Do not show them your fear." Hesitantly, she placed her hand on his forearm. The moment she touched him, the bond flared, a current of warmth and raw power that steadied her knees, chased away the cold dread. It felt like borrowing his courage. Together, they walked into the stone halls. Guards snapped to attention, fists to chests. Their eyes flickered to Celine with shock, but none dared stare. Kalen's pace was purposeful, but he never pulled ahead, keeping her firmly at his side. The message was clear. They arrived before immense iron-bound doors. Guards pulled them open, revealing the council chamber. It was a cavernous circular room, dominated by a massive round table, carved from a single petrified tree. The air was thick with the aggressive, territorial scent of powerful alphas. At least 20 of them were gathered, massive, scarred warriors. They all rose as Kalen entered, expressions a mixture of grudging respect and open hostility. Their collective gaze fell on Celine. The force of it was a physical blow. She could feel their appraisal, their shock, their immediate, visceral dismissal. Wolfless, weak, unworthy. She faltered, hand tightening on Kalen's arm. His arm was an immovable anchor. He didn't glance at her. His golden eyes swept the room, meeting every alpha's gaze, challenging them. "You requested an audience," Kalen's voice boomed, silencing murmurs. "You have it." An old barrel-chested alpha stepped forward. His scent was frost and old blood. Lord Boren of the Frostfang pack. "Kalen," he began, foregoing the royal title in defiance, "we come as brothers concerned for the throne. For 50 years you have stood alone, a bastion of strength. Now this?" His eyes flicked to Celine with undisguised disgust. "You bond with an outsider, a stray. She carries no pack scent of worth, no wolf spirit. She is a hollow vessel. This bond is a mockery. It weakens us all. You must set her aside." A chorus of growled agreements echoed. Set her aside? Just like Ronan. Kalen's hand moved from under hers, his arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against his side, a possessive, unequivocal claim. He turned his head, lips brushing her temple, his voice a low murmur meant for her, yet loud enough for all. "Do you see that old fool, Celine? He thinks power lies in bloodlines and the strength of the wolf." He raised his voice, addressing the council, golden eyes blazing. "He is wrong.
This is Selene Thorne. She is not a stray. She is not hollow. She is my mate, my queen. The bond is done." He paused, letting the words settle. Her strength is not the loud, brutish howl of a common wolf. It is the quiet, enduring strength of the mountain itself, the strength to survive, a strength none of you have ever had to learn.
He looked down at her, and for the first time she saw something beyond power in his eyes, a fierce, burning protectiveness. "Her word," he announced, gaze sweeping the stunned alphas, "is now my word. Her safety is the safety of the throne. The first of you to show her anything less than absolute reverence will answer to me." He looked directly at Boren, a cold, predatory smile touching his lips. "You wish for me to set her aside? Then come, old friend. Come and try to take her from me." The silence was absolute, sharp as ice. Boren's face hardened into furious granite. The air crackled with enraged alpha energy, ozone, bloodlust, wounded pride. The combined pressure of their wills pressed on Selene, a suffocating weight designed to make a lesser wolf crumble. Her knees felt weak, the omega instinct to submit surged, but Kalen's arm was a band of steel. The bond pulsed. Through it she felt not his anger, but his unwavering certainty. It flowed into her, a transfusion of courage. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin, met Boren's hateful glare with a stillness she didn't know she possessed. She had already faced the destruction of her world. What more could these snarling brutes do? Boren took a half-step forward, hands clenching. A low, guttural growl promised violence. "You would choose this shell over the loyalty of your pack alphas? This is madness, Kalen. It is a weakness she has poisoned you with." "The only poison here, Boren, is your ambition," Kalen countered, voice lethally calm. "You have coveted my throne for decades. You see this not as a weakness in me, but as an opportunity. Do you think I am blind?" He took a deliberate step forward, placing Selene slightly behind him. "You will address her as your majesty, and you will retract your insult, now." Boren's face purpled. "I will not. I answer to the ancient laws of the pack, not to the whims of a king bewitched by a bar." Kalen moved. It was an explosion of motion, a blur of black leather and steel. One moment he was beside Selene, the next he was across the room, his hand clamped around Boren's throat, lifting the massive alpha clear off the ground. He slammed Boren against the stone wall, cracks spiderwebbed through the stone around the alpha's head. "You have forgotten your place," Kalen hissed, voice a terrifying vibration. The pure predatory fire of his ancient beast was fully unleashed. "You have forgotten who sits on the throne." Boren's face went from purple to blue, eyes bulging, hands clawing weakly. "My mate's honor is my honor," Kalen growled, face inches from Boren's. "Your insult is treason. The penalty for treason is death." He was going to kill him, right here. "Stop." The word was quiet, and in the suffocating silence it rang like a bell. Kalen froze, his head turned slowly, molten eyes still blazing, finding Selene. She stepped forward, legs shaking but steady. Every eye swiveled to her. "Let him go," she said, voice finding a strange, quiet strength. A low growl of protest rumbled in Kalen's chest. "You dishonored him, and you have answered his dishonor," she said, walking closer. She could feel the violent energy of his barely contained wolf. She reached out, placed a trembling hand on the arm holding Boren aloft. The muscle was like forged iron. "You have shown them your strength. Now show them your mercy. A king who kills for an insult is a tyrant. A king who offers mercy for a queen's sake is a ruler." Kaelin's gaze searched hers. The feral light warred with cold intelligence. The bond hummed. He felt her fear, but also her resolve, her plea not for Boren's life, but for his own reign. She was asking him to be wise. Slowly, the tension in his arm eased. With a final contemptuous shove, he released Boren, who collapsed in a heap, gasping, clutching his throat. Kaelin turned his back on him completely. He faced the council, his arm again around Celene's waist. "My queen has requested mercy for you, Boren. You will have it. This one time." His voice rang with finality. "This council is dismissed. Go back to your lands, govern your pacts, and remember who your king is and who your queen is. Should I hear a whisper of disrespect toward her from any of you, I will not send a raven. I will come myself." Without another word, he guided Selene from the chamber. The alphas parted like a tide, heads bowed, sense a mixture of fear, resentment, and grudging awe. She had not only survived, in some small way she had won. Kaelin led her not to her chambers, but up a winding staircase to the battlements. The cold, clean wind whipped at them, tearing at hair and clothes. The view was breathtaking, the fortress perched on a cliffside, overlooking a vast forest stretching to snow-capped mountains. This is what they fight for: land, power, the right to call themselves Alpha. He turned to her, serious. "What you did in there was more powerful than anything I could have accomplished by snapping his neck." "I was terrified," she admitted. "I know." He reached out, gloved fingers gently tucking a wind-blown strand of hair behind her ear. The tender gesture was at odds with the violence he'd just displayed. "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting in spite of it. You showed the grace of a true queen." She looked away at the jagged peaks. "Ronan used to tell me my quietness was a weakness, that my lack of a wolf made me submissive by nature." A low growl rumbled. "Ronan is a fool. He saw a still lake and thought it shallow, never realizing the depths beneath. Your stillness is strength in reserve. My wolf feels it. It is why he chose you. He is tired of the endless howling of lesser beasts. He craved the silence." The honesty was disarming. "Why did you never take a mate?" she dared to ask. He was silent for a moment, gaze distant. "Because all who were offered came with a price, an alliance, a treaty, a demand. Their fathers saw the mate bond as a leash to put on a king. None of them simply saw me, the man, the wolf. They saw the crown." He looked back, golden eyes raw with a pain that seemed centuries old. "But you," he said, "you saw a stranger in a dark corner. You came with nothing to offer but your own brokenness, and asked for nothing but a means to survive. You were the first honest thing to happen to me in 50 years.
His words struck a chord deep inside her, a place numb since her rejection. He was protecting her because he saw her. Impulsively, she reached up, tracing the line of the old scar on his cheek. He flinched almost imperceptibly, a lifetime of solitude making him unaccustomed to touch, but didn't pull away. "Who gave you this?" "My father," he said, voice flat. "The Mad King. He taught me that love and power were weapons. He was unwell." The simple pain in the statement told her more than a saga could. His fortress wasn't just around his throne, it was around his heart, and she had stumbled right through the gates. He caught her hand, fingers lacing with hers. The bond flared, a gentle, warming glow spreading through her chest, a feeling of belonging. "Boren and the others will not accept this easily," he said, voice returning to its regal tone, though laced with new intimacy. "They will scheme. They will look for a way to prove you unworthy.
Let them, she whispered, finding an echo of his own words. She looked up into his molten gold eyes, and for the first time since the tavern, did not feel like a victim or a prisoner. He lowered his head, forehead resting against hers. His scent, storm and stone and solitude, filled her senses, chasing away the last of her fears. It was the scent of safety, of home. "They think you are my weakness," he murmured, breath warm against her lips. "They are about to find out. You are my strength." He closed the small distance and kissed her. It was not a kiss of passion, but of sealing, a vow made of touch and breath, a claim staked not on a throne, but on a soul, the shattering of a 50-year winter. As he pulled back, the cold wind seemed to hold its breath. His golden eyes were stripped of regal fury, filled with a raw, wondering intensity. The bond had shifted. It was a living, breathing thing, warm and luminous. Before she could speak, frantic footsteps sounded on the stairs. Lord Valerius appeared, face ashen, robes askew. "Your Majesty, a rider from the south, bearing the banner of the Blackwood Pack." Celine's blood turned to ice. Ronan. Kaelin's demeanor shifted instantly, all tenderness extinguished, replaced by glacial cold. His hands dropped from her face, one to his sword, the other pulling her firmly back against his side. "He crosses my borders uninvited?" "He stopped at the border patrol," Valerius stammered. "He sends a message. Alpha Ronan claims his fated mate was stolen from him in a moment of weakness, taken against her will by a nameless rogue. He petitions for the Alpha King's justice. He is marching with his enforcers to reclaim what is his." The audacity stole her breath. Stolen? Reclaim? He had thrown her away. A sound tore from Kaelin's throat, a low, guttural snarl of a predator challenged. "Send the legions to the southern border. I want his head on a pike before sunset." "No!" The word escaped her lips before she thought. Kaelin looked down, expression thunderous. "He is a liar and a dog. He will die for his arrogance." "And what will that prove?" she asked, voice shaking but clear. "That you are a possessive alpha just like him? That I am a thing to be fought over? His lies will become truth in the whispers of the packs. They will say you stole me, that you are ruled by appetite, not mind." She saw the logic pierce his rage. He was a king before an alpha, a strategist before a warrior. "What do you propose?" he asked, fury banked, sharpened. "Let him come," she said, words tasting like poison. "Let him stand before you and make his claim. Let him speak his lies to me in front of witnesses. Let the truth be heard from my lips. He made his rejection public. Let my rejection of him be just as loud." A slow, dangerous smile spread across Kaelin's face, a predator seeing a more satisfying way to destroy its prey. He looked at Valerius. "Send a raven. Grant Alpha Ronan and a delegation of 5 safe passage. They are to be disarmed at the gates and escorted to the Great Hall. They will have their audience at dawn." Valerius bowed and fled. Kaelin turned back to her, large hands on her shoulders. "This will not be easy. He will try to wound you with words. He knows your fears. He planted them." A tear traced a cold path down her cheek. She hated that Ronan still had that power. Kaelin Stumm brushed it away, touch surprisingly gentle. "Then we will rip them out by the roots." He led her to his private study, a room lined with books and maps, a fire roaring. He sat her in a worn leather chair and knelt before her, taking her cold hands. "Tell me everything. Leave out no detail, no insult, no moment of shame. I will be your armor tomorrow, but armor must be forged to fit. I need to know the shape of your pain." And so she told him everything, the whispers, the isolation, the fragile hope Ronan represented, the bonfire, Lyra's scent, the cold, dead look in his eyes. The words wolfless, barren, nothing. With every word, she felt the fury coiling inside him, a shield of rage directed outward. When she finished, voice raw, the room was silent, save for the crackling fire. He let go of one hand, reached up, fingers gently tracing the bond mark on her neck. He branded you with his words. He tried to define you by what you lacked. His golden eyes held hers, fierce. He called you wolfless, but I see a spirit that could not be broken. He called you barren, but I see a heart with the strength to mother a new age. He called you nothing, and in his blindness he threw away everything. He stood, pulling her up, leading her to a large mirror. He stood behind her, hands on her shoulders, forcing her to look at their reflection, the towering king and the slender woman who somehow looked right in his shadow. When he looks at you tomorrow, he will expect to see the broken Omega he discarded. He will not find her. She is gone. His fingers traced the bond mark on her neck. This is not a collar of ownership, Celine. It is a crown. It is the symbol of my choice. He will come expecting a slave. He will find a queen. The night passed in tense silence. Kaelin stayed with her in the study, a silent, unwavering presence. As dawn's gray light crept in, a guard knocked. "Your Majesty, the Blackwood delegation has arrived." Kaelin rose, every inch the king. "Are you ready?" Celine took a deep breath. She thought of Ronan's sneer, Lyra's smile, the pack's turned backs. Then she thought of Kaelin's fury, his kiss, his voice calling her his queen. She looked him in the eye. Yes. Together they walked to the great hall. The door swung open. Ronan stood in the center, flanked by 4 enforcers. He looked arrogant, confident, dressed in his finest leathers. His eyes found her. For a fraction of a second, his confident mask slipped. He had expected chains, servitude. He did not expect her walking at the Alpha King's side, head high, the glowing royal bond mark proudly displayed on her neck. His gaze flickered from the mark to Kaelin's possessive hand on her waist. His face paled. The full catastrophic reality of his miscalculation crashed down on him. He had not come to reclaim a broken Omega from a rogue. He had come to the dragon's lair to demand the return of the dragon's treasure, and the dragon was watching him with hungry golden eyes.
The great hall was a vast, echoing cavern of stone designed to intimidate. Sunlight struggled through high windows. Banners bearing the snarling wolf's head of House Thorn hung silent. The black, petrified oak throne on the dais was empty. Kaelin stood before it, a mountain of coiled fury with Celine at his side. Ronan stared, disbelief shifting to dawning horror. "Alpha Ronan of the Blackwood," Kaelin's voice boomed, echoing. It was not a greeting, it was the tolling of a bell. "State your claim." Ronan swallowed, bravado crumbling. His enforcers shifted nervously under the crushing pressure of Kaelin's dominance. Finding a sliver of rehearsed arrogance, Ronan puffed his chest. "Your Majesty, I seek your renowned justice. My fated mate Celine was abducted from my territory. In grief following a minor disagreement, she fled. I believe she was taken against her will by a rogue who seeks to use her against me." He dared look at Celine, attempting a pained longing. "Celine, my love, it is over. You are safe. Tell the king you were forced." The lies were so blatant they were almost laughable. Celine held the old fear, the instinct to fade away, but Kaelin's hand was a warm pressure on her back. He will expect a slave. He will find a queen. She took a step forward, deliberately breaking contact with Kaelin, standing on her own, a declaration. "There was no abduction, Ronan," she said, voice clear and cold, ringing with a confidence that stunned him to silence. "There was no confusion. Our disagreement was not minor." She turned her head slightly, giving him a clear view of the bond mark. "And the man you call a rogue is my Alpha, my king. The bond was not forced. It was sought, offered, and accepted."
A collective gasp from his enforcers. Ronan looked as if struck. "Sought?" he choked, face flushing dark red. "You worthless, wolfless whore! You would profane the fated bond for a night with a stranger?" Before the last word left his mouth, a low predatory growl ripped through the hall. Kaelin took a step forward, golden eyes blazing, the beast clawing at the surface. "Wait." Selene put a hand on his chest. The muscle beneath was rigid stone, vibrating with violent energy. "This is my truth to speak, not yours to avenge. Not yet." Kaelin looked down, a battle raging in his eyes. He gave a slow, reluctant nod, jaw tight. Selene turned back to Ronan, gaze unwavering. "You speak of the fated bond, you who dishonored it with another she-wolf, you who shattered it before our entire pack, calling me barren and nothing. You nullified that bond, Ronan. You burned that bridge. I simply found another way across the river." "Lyra meant nothing," Ronan insisted, voice rising in desperation. "A moment of foolishness. A true mate would have forgiven me." "A true alpha," she retorted, voice sharp as glass, "would never have needed forgiveness for such a crime. He would never have committed it." The truth hung in the air, stark, undeniable. Ronan was left sputtering, his victimhood collapsing. He was no noble alpha seeking justice. He was a philanderer and a fool who had thrown away a mate, only to realize too late he'd discarded something of immense value to a greater power. Greed had brought him here. "I reject your claim," Kaelin's voice cut through, each word a hammer blow. "The she-wolf Selene was packless, bondless, and free when she came to me. Our bond is recognized under the old law. She is mine. She is the queen of the North." He looked at Ronan with cold contempt. "You came seeking justice. You shall have it. You publicly humiliated your fated mate. For this, you will cede the southern hunting grounds of your territory, from the Whispering River to the Stone Ridge to the Crown, a tithe for her pain." Ronan's jaw dropped. The southern grounds were the heart of his pack's prosperity. "You cannot. That is a quarter of my lands. My pack will starve." "They should have thought of that when they turned their backs on one of their own," Kaelin said, devoid of pity. "Furthermore, you will make a public apology. You will send a decree to every pack, recanting your insults. You will state that Selene is not wolfless in spirit, and your rejection was an error of your own weakness." This was worse than losing land. It was the complete destruction of his pride. He would be a laughingstock. "I will not," Ronan snarled, desperation boiling into suicidal rage. "I will not be humiliated by this barren—" Kaelin moved, a blur of shadow and death. His hand shot out, seized him by the face, lifted him from his feet, and slammed him onto the great stone floor. The crack of bone and stone echoed. Ronan's enforcers, seeing their alpha dispatched, broke. With cries of terror, they drew hidden boot knives, a grave insult, and charged. They didn't get 5 feet. From the shadows along the walls, the royal guard emerged. Not ceremonial guards, the king's personal executioners. Clad in black, silent armor, faces hidden behind wolf-visored helms. They moved with silent, lethal grace. Steel rang. The fight was over before it began. The 4 enforcers lay dead or dying on the cold stone. Selene stared, her hand over her mouth. Kaelin stood over Ronan's broken, whimpering form. He hadn't killed him. He'd simply broken him. "You were warned," he growled. "You were offered mercy. You chose this." He turned to Selene, expression softening almost imperceptibly. He held out his hand. "This is not your justice to witness. Come." She took his hand, fingers trembling as they laced with his. He led her from the hall, leaving the royal guard to clean up the mess of blood and broken pride. Back on the battlements, the wind whipped clean. She was shaking from the aftershock. "You could have killed him," she whispered.
Death is an easy escape, Kaelin said, guiding her to the parapet, arms wrapping around her in a protective embrace. He will live. He will return to his pack, broken, humiliated, stripped of lands. He will be forced to send out the decree praising the woman he scorned. Every day for the rest of his miserable life, he will wake up knowing that the nothing he threw away is now a queen, and her name spoken with more reverence than his ever will be. That is a far crueler punishment. That is justice. She leaned back against his solid chest, drawing strength from his warmth. The wind felt clean, like freedom. The shadows of her past had been scoured clean by fire and steel, leaving only the future. Their future. "It's over," she whispered. "No," he murmured, lips brushing her hair. He turned her in his arms, golden gaze intense. Ronan was a symptom. The disease is the old way of thinking, the prejudice. Bourne and the others still believe you are a weakness. We have dealt with the pup. Now we must deal with the old wolves plotting in the shadows. He cupped her face. I am going to make you so strong, so revered, that they will have no choice but to bow to you, not out of fear of me, out of respect for you. You are the key to changing everything."
The weeks that followed were a crucible. Kaelin was true to his word. He didn't just shield her, he armed her. Her education began not in soft arts, but in harsh realities. Mornings were spent in the royal library with a reluctant but dutiful Lord Valerius. She studied pack histories, bloodlines, treaties, grudges. She learned the laws, written and primal. She discovered Kaelin's father, the Mad King, had nearly destroyed the kingdom by favoring pure-blood alphas, leading to decades of infighting. Kaelin's 50-year reign had been a brutal process of stitching territories together by sheer force. The old prejudices that condemned her still simmered beneath a fragile peace. Afternoons were spent with Kaelin in the map room, the strategic heart. He taught her strategy, moving carved wolves across a topographical map of the continent. He showed her supply lines, rival weaknesses, the delicate balance of power. Lord Boren's Frostfang controls the northern passes, Kaelin explained one afternoon, finger tracing a mountain range. He grows wealthy, taxing travelers, but his people are overstretched. His warriors are arrogant, a hammer looking for a nail. He looked at her, golden eyes intense. A hammer is useless against the wind. Power is not always strength. It is knowing where your enemy is weak. He was teaching her to think like him, to see the world as a web of alliances, ambitions, vulnerabilities. He was giving her the tools to rule. But it was the evenings that changed her most. Kaelin took her to the sparring yards. "You do not have a wolf's strength," he said, pressing a slender, perfectly balanced dagger into her hand. "But you have a wolf's spirit, speed, a keen mind, the will to survive. That is more than enough." Under his patient, demanding tutelage, she learned how to hold the blade, use an opponent's weight against them, where to strike. He was a terrifyingly graceful fighter, control absolute. He never hurt her, but never went easy. He forced her to anticipate, to fight back. In the sweat and dust of the training yard, the timid Omega was flayed away, revealing a core of tempered steel. The bond between them deepened, a constant, silent conversation. She felt his frustrations during council meetings, the weight of the crown. He felt her small triumphs, the first time she identified a pack's political weakness, the first time she disarmed a training partner. Their nights were spent in his chambers, talking by the fire, sharing stories, fears, dreams. He slept on a pallet of furs on the floor, giving her the massive bed, a gesture of respect so profound it touched her more than any caress. He was courting her, earning her trust, waiting for her. The news of Ronan's humiliation spread. His decree arrived, posted in the Great Hall. In it, he recanted every insult, praised Celine's strength, blamed his own weakness. He became a cautionary tale, a laughingstock.
The ceded lands bolstered royal patrols. The Blackwood pack was diminished. But Boren and the conservative alphas were not silenced. A subtle campaign of whispers began. The king is obsessed. The wolfless queen makes him soft. An Omega who cannot produce a true-blooded alpha heir will be the end of the Thorn dynasty and the security of the North. The final confrontation came at the Harvest Moon Festival, when alphas brought their tithes and renewed vows. The great hall was packed. Selene stood beside the throne, not behind it. She wore a gown of deep forest green embroidered with silver thread. The bond mark on her neck seemed to glow. One by one, alphas came forward. When Lord Boren stepped up, a palpable tension fell. He bowed stiffly. "Your Majesty, I bring the tithes of the Frostfang and renew my vow." "The throne accepts your vow," Kaelin said coolly, but Boren didn't step back. He straightened, playing to the audience. "Majesty, the harvest moon is also a time of concern for the future, for the continuation of strong bloodlines. For 50 years we have had a king, but a kingdom needs an heir, a true-blooded alpha heir to secure the North." The challenge was laid bare, a direct public attack on her greatest perceived weakness. The hall erupted in murmurs. Selene felt the cold dread. This was the one wound she didn't know how to fight. Before Kaelin could unleash his fury, Selene held up a hand, a quiet gesture that commanded silence. She stepped forward, descending to stand on the same level as Boren. "You speak of bloodlines, Lord Boren, of the strength of the wolf." Her voice was calm, clear, carrying. "She did not heal to you, but to the crowd. For my entire life I have been judged by the wolf I do not have. You see a hollow vessel. You believe strength is only born from a pure alpha womb. You cling to the old ways, the very ways that allowed the Mad King to tear this kingdom apart." She turned, looking up at Kaelin, her voice filling with undeniable love and reverence. "Our king has spent 50 years proving that true strength lies not in blood, but in will, not in lineage, but in leadership." She turned back to Boren, gaze sharp as her dagger. "You worry about an heir? You think the future rests in the womb of its queen? You are mistaken. The future rests in unity, in abandoning the prejudices that have kept us fighting for generations, in accepting that strength comes in many forms." She took a deep breath, steeling for her final gambit. "You see me as barren, but the old magic that binds me to your king is far more ancient than your petty concerns over blood. It is a magic of spirit, not of flesh." As she spoke, she focused her will, reaching deep inside to the bond, to the well of power Kaelin had shared. It was a terrifying, instinctive act. She pulled on that power, not for strength, but for something more. A searing heat started in the mark on her neck and flooded her being. Her eyes began to glow, not fierce molten gold, but a soft, luminous silver, the light of the full moon itself. The light grew, bathing the dais in an ethereal glow. A collective gasp swept the hall. Even Kaelin stared in pure, unadulterated awe. The silver light coalesced. For a fleeting, impossible moment, the spectral image of a great wolf made of pure moonlight shimmered into existence behind her. Vast, ancient, powerful. Its silver eyes held a wisdom that transcended time. Her spirit wolf, awakened by a bond not of fate, but of choice, of love. The hall was utterly, profoundly silent. Lord Boren stared, face a mask of shock and superstitious terror. He had challenged a queen and been answered by a goddess. He dropped to his knees, forehead touching the cold stone. "Your Majesty," he whispered, voice choked with awe. One by one, throughout the great hall, the other alphas, the doubters, the schemers, the loyalists, all sank to their knees. They did not bow to Kaelin, they bowed to her. Kaelin descended the dais, eyes shining with fierce pride and a love so profound it stole her breath. He took her hand, raised it for all to see.
"Behold your queen," he roared, voice filled with triumphant joy. "The Alpha is the strength of the pack, but the Omega is its heart, and our heart is strong." The assembled wolves of the north, heads still bowed, let out a single unified howl of fealty, a sound not of submission, but of celebration, the sound of a new age being born, an age not of blood, but of spirit, an age of the wolfless queen.
The victory in the Great Hall was absolute, but not final. Respect, Celine quickly learned, was not the same as acceptance. Fear of her newfound mystical power curbed open dissent, but it also cast a longer, more dangerous shadow. Whispers didn't stop, they just grew more subtle, more venomous. Moon-touched witch, she has bewitched the king not with flesh, but with dark magic. The goddess's light would not shine on a barren vessel. This is a trick, a deception. Kaelin's protection was a fortress, but even fortresses had cracks. The first attempt was not a direct assault, but a poison, both literal and figurative. It happened during a state dinner a week after the festival. The hall was filled with the remaining alphas who had stayed to discuss border treaties. Celine, now dressed in the finery of a queen, sat at Kaelin's right hand. She was learning to navigate the intricate dance of court conversation, to listen to the meanings beneath the words. The first course was a rich venison stew. As she lifted her spoon, a sharp, acrid scent hit her nostrils, faint, masked by rosemary and thyme, but unmistakable to an Omega whose senses had been heightened by the royal bond. Wolfsbane, a slow-acting poison that would induce a feverish weakness, mimic a wasting sickness, perfect for a frail queen. Her hand froze. Her eyes snapped to the servant who had placed her bowl, a young beta with downcast eyes, trembling slightly. He didn't look up. Without a word, Celine placed her spoon down. She leaned slightly toward Kaelin, who was in deep discussion with a neighboring alpha. Under the table, her hand found his thigh and pressed, a silent signal they had not discussed, but which the bond conveyed with crystalline clarity. Danger. Kaelin didn't miss a beat. He finished his sentence, took a deliberate sip of his wine, and then his gaze swept the table. It landed on Celine's untouched bowl. His nostrils flared almost imperceptibly. The air around him grew heavy. He stood. The conversation died. "This stew is cold," Kaelin announced, his voice calm, conversational, too calm. "A disgrace to our guests." He looked directly at the trembling servant. "You, taste it." The servant's face went bone white. "Your Majesty, I couldn't possibly." "I command it." 2 guards materialized from the shadows. The servant whimpered. He was forced forward, a spoonful of the stew shoved into his mouth. He choked, sputtered. Within minutes, a sheen of sweat broke on his forehead. His breathing grew labored. He collapsed, convulsing weakly. A stunned silence gripped the hall, then erupted into uproar. Kaelin's roar silenced it all. Silence. His golden eyes burned, scanning the faces of the alphas, his council, the staff. An attempt on the life of your queen in my hall. The fury in his voice was colder than the northern ice. Find out who gave the order. Start with him. He pointed to the convulsing servant. And when you find them, bring them to the black cells. I will deal with them personally. The dinner was over. Celine was escorted not to her chambers, but to Kaelin's war room. He paced like a caged beast. "They strike at you because they fear you," he growled, "because you are changing things. This will not be the last attempt." "I know," Celine said, her own voice steady, though her heart was racing. The shock was giving way to a cold, clear anger. "They want me to be weak, to be afraid, to hide." "You will not hide." He stopped before her, cupping her face. "But you will be guarded at all times." Guards didn't stop a poisoned stew, Kaylin, she said, a new resolve hardening within her. I need to be able to protect myself, not just with a dagger in a training yard. I need to understand this. She touched the silver mark on her neck. This power. You called it a crown. I need to learn how to wield it. Kaylin searched her face, then gave a slow nod. Then we begin tonight. Their training took a new turn. Under the light of the full moon, in a secluded, walled courtyard open to the sky, Kaylin taught her not of politics or blades, but of the bond. The power you called upon in the hall, he said, standing before her, his own form silhouetted against the moon, it is not mine that you borrow, it is ours, a third thing born of the connection. My strength is the mountain, unyielding, enduring. Your spirit, as your wolf showed, is the moon, reflective, revealing, connecting. The bond is the sky that holds them both. He taught her to listen to the hum of the mark, to differentiate between his emotional state, fury, calm, focus, and the raw, neutral energy they shared. He taught her to pull on it with intention, not desperation. It was exhausting, exhilarating. She learned to summon a soft silver glow to her hands, not just her eyes. She could, with immense effort, project a wave of calming energy, a feeble imitation of her spirit wolf's presence, but a start. You are learning control, Kaylin said one night after she had successfully lit a single candle wick across the courtyard with a focused thread of energy. Sweat dripped from her brow. But remember, power like this is a beacon. The more you use it, the more you will be seen, not just by allies. I'm already seen, she replied, wiping her forehead. I'd rather be seen as strong than as a target. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. That is my queen. Their relationship deepened in the quiet moments between trials. He began to share more of his past, not just the scar from his father, but the weight of 50 years of solitary decisions, the betrayals, the constant vigilance. She shared the loneliness of being wolfless, the constant feeling of being a ghost in her own life. One evening, as they sat by the fire in his study, she asked, "Do you ever regret it, taking the throne?" He was silent for a long time. Regret is a luxury kings cannot afford. Every decision I made, every life I took, every alliance I shattered, it was to prevent a return to my father's chaos, to create a stability strong enough to outlast me. He looked at her, the firelight dancing in his bold eyes. But I was building a tomb, not a kingdom. Until you made me want to build a legacy worth leaving, not just a pile of stone and fear. He reached for her then, not with the claiming passion of the bond, but with a tenderness that made her breath catch. His kiss was slow, searching, a conversation without words. It was the first time he initiated a touch that was purely about connection, not comfort or protection. That night, he didn't retire to his pallet on the floor. He stayed beside her on the large bed, holding her close as she slept, his scent of storm and stone her blanket, the steady beat of his heart her lullaby. The fortress around his heart was not just been breached, he was dismantling it, stone by stone, for her. The victory in the Great Hall was absolute, but not final. Respect, Celine quickly learned, was not the same as acceptance. Fear of her newfound mystical power curbed open dissent, but it also cast a longer, more dangerous shadow. Whispers didn't stop, they just grew more subtle, more venomous. Moon-touched witch, she has bewitched the king not with flesh, but with dark magic. The goddess's light would not shine on a barren vessel. This is a trick, a deception. Kaylin's protection was a fortress, but even fortresses had cracks. The first attempt was not a direct assault, but a poison, both literal and figurative. It happened during a state dinner a week after the festival. The hall was filled with the remaining alphas who had stayed to discuss border treaties. Celine, now dressed in the finery of a queen, sat at Kaylin's right hand. She was learning to navigate the intricate dance of court conversation, to listen to the meanings beneath the words. The first course was a rich venison stew. As she lifted her spoon, a sharp, acrid scent hit her nostrils, faint, masked by rosemary and thyme, but unmistakable to an Omega whose senses had been heightened by the royal bond. Wolfsbane, a slow-acting poison that would induce a feverish weakness, mimic a wasting sickness, perfect for a frail queen. Her hand froze. Her eyes snapped to the servant who had placed her bowl, a young beta with downcast eyes, trembling slightly. He didn't look up. Without a word, Celine placed her spoon down. She leaned slightly toward Kaylin, who was in deep discussion with a neighboring alpha. Under the table, her hand found his thigh and pressed, a silent signal they had not discussed, but which the bond conveyed with crystalline clarity. Danger. Kaylin didn't miss a beat. He finished his sentence, took a deliberate sip of his wine, and then his gaze swept the table. It landed on Celine's untouched bowl. His nostrils flared almost imperceptibly. The air around him grew heavy. He stood. The conversation died. "This stew is cold," Kaylin announced, his voice calm, conversational. Too calm. "A disgrace to our guests." He looked directly at the trembling servant. "You, taste it." The servant's face went bone white. "Your Majesty, I couldn't possibly." "I command it." Two guards materialized from the shadows. The servant whimpered. He was forced forward, a spoonful of the stew shoved into his mouth. He choked, sputtered. Within minutes, a sheen of sweat broke on his forehead. His breathing grew labored. He collapsed, convulsing weakly. A stunned silence gripped the hall, then erupted into uproar. Kaylin's roar silenced it all. Silence. His golden eyes burned, scanning the faces of the alphas, his council, the staff. An attempt on the life of your queen in my hall. The fury in his voice was colder than the northern ice. Find out who gave the order. Start with him. He pointed to the convulsing servant. And when you find them, bring them to the black cells. I will deal with them personally. The dinner was over. Celine was escorted not to her chambers, but to Kaylin's war room. He paced like a caged beast. "They strike at you because they fear you," he growled, "because you are changing things. This will not be the last attempt." "I know," Celine said, her own voice steady, though her heart was racing. The shock was giving way to a cold, clear anger. "They want me to be weak, to be afraid, to hide." "You will not hide." He stopped before her, cupping her face. "But you will be guarded, at all times." "Guards didn't stop a poisoned stew, Kaylin," she said, a new resolve hardening within her. "I need to be able to protect myself, not just with a dagger in a training yard. I need to understand this." She touched the silver mark on her neck. "This power. You called it a crown. I need to learn how to wield it." Kaylin searched her face, then gave a slow nod. "Then we begin tonight." Their training took a new turn. Under the light of the full moon, in a secluded, walled courtyard open to the sky, Kaylin taught her not of politics or blades, but of the bond. "The power you called upon in the hall," he said, standing before her, his own form silhouetted against the moon, "it is not mine that you borrow, it is ours, a third thing, born of the connection. My strength is the mountain, unyielding, enduring. Your spirit, as your wolf showed, is the moon, reflective, revealing, connecting. The bond is the sky that holds them both." He taught her to listen to the hum of the mark, to differentiate between his emotional state, fury, calm, focus, and the raw, neutral energy they shared. He taught her to pull on it with intention, not desperation. It was exhausting, exhilarating. She learned to summon a soft silver glow to her hands, not just her eyes. She could, with immense effort, project a wave of calming energy, a feeble imitation of her spirit wolf's presence, but a start. "You are learning control," Kaylin said one night after she had successfully lit a single candle wick across the courtyard with a focused thread of energy. Sweat dripped from her brow. "But remember, power like this is a beacon. The more you use it, the more you will be seen, not just by allies." "I'm already seen," she replied, wiping her forehead. "I'd rather be seen as strong than as a target." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "That is my queen." Their relationship deepened in the quiet moments between trials. He began to share more of his past, not just the scar from his father, but the weight of 50 years of solitary decisions, the betrayals, the constant vigilance. She shared the loneliness of being wolfless, the constant feeling of being a ghost in her own life. One evening, as they sat by the fire in his study, she asked, "Do you ever regret it, taking the throne?" He was silent for a long time. "Regret is a luxury kings cannot afford. Every decision I made, every life I took, every alliance I shattered, it was to prevent a return to my father's chaos, to create a stability strong enough to outlast me." He looked at her, the firelight dancing in his bold eyes. "But I was building a tomb, not a kingdom. Until you made me want to build a legacy worth leaving, not just a pile of stone and fear." He reached for her then, not with the claiming passion of the bond, but with a tenderness that made her breath catch. His kiss was slow, searching, a conversation without words. It was the first time he initiated a touch that was purely about connection, not comfort or protection. That night, he didn't retire to his pallet on the floor. He stayed beside her on the large bed, holding her close as she slept, his scent of storm and stone her blanket, the steady beat of his heart her lullaby. The fortress around his heart was not just been breached, he was dismantling it, stone by stone, for her.
While Celine trained and her bond with Kaylin deepened, the shadow players moved. Lord Boren, publicly humbled and sworn to fealty, was privately seething. The attempt with the poison had been clumsy, a test likely orchestrated by a lesser ally to see how guarded she was. It had failed, but it provided valuable information. The Queen's senses were preternaturally sharp, and the King's reaction was swift and brutal. A new strategy was needed. Boren, in secret correspondence with other disgruntled alphas from the southern timber packs, devised a plan not of force, but of character assassination. If they could not kill her body, they would kill her reputation. The tool they used was Ronan. Broken, land-poor, and drowning in shame, Ronan was a vessel of pure hatred. Boren's agents made contact, offering not support but a platform. Whisper campaigns began in the taverns and lower towns, stories spread by traveling merchants. The stories were vicious and clever. They didn't deny Celine's power, they twisted it. She wasn't moon-blessed, she was a siren who had used dark Omega wiles to seduce a lonely king, clouding his mind. Her spirit wolf was an illusion, a trick learned from rogue witches in the neutral lands. The real reason Ronan had cast her out? Not because she was barren, but because she was unnatural. She had tried to poison him with her twisted magic when he refused to participate in her rituals. She had fled not from heartbreak, but because the pack was about to execute her for dark practices. The story painted Kaylin not as strong king, but as a duped old man, enslaved by a cunning sorceress. It painted Celine as a monster. These whispers took longer to reach the stone walls of the fortress, but they did, carried by the wary looks of new servants, the hesitant conversations that stopped when she entered a room. Celine felt the shift. The awe that had followed her display in the great hall was now tinged with fear and suspicion. The respect was brittle.
Kalen's response was characteristically direct. He had the palace gossips questioned, the most vocal merchants brought in. But fear of the king's justice only drove the whispers deeper underground, making them more potent. "They're trying to isolate me," Celine said to Kalen in the map room, "to make the people and the packs fear me more than they respect you. If they see you as compromised by a witch, their loyalty to the throne itself crumbles." Kalen's jaw was tight. "I can order silence, but I cannot order belief." "Then we give them something else to believe," Celine said, an idea forming. It was risky. It played directly into the narrative of her being a public figure, but she was done hiding. "The people of the fortress only see me at ceremonies. They hear whispers. They need to see me, not the queen on the dais, but the woman." Kalen frowned. "It's not safe. Boren's agents are likely inside these walls." "Nowhere is safe," she countered. "But if I am only ever seen as a distant, potentially dangerous symbol, the whispers win. I need to be real to them." After a long, tense moment, Kalen nodded. "What do you propose?" "Let me visit the healing wards, the kitchens, the stables, not with a grand procession, with you or with a small guard. Let me talk to the cook who burned the bread, the stable boy who cares for the horses, the warrior recovering from a patrol injury. Let them see I have no horns, that my touch doesn't curse." Kalen's gaze was proud and worried. "You will be exposing your flank." "A queen who only hides behind her king is no queen at all. She is a prisoner. You told me I was your strength. Let me be." And so Celine began her campaign for the hearts of her own people. She started in the healing wards, where the fortress's injured warriors and sick servants were treated. She went not as a queen bestowing charity, but as a helper. She had no medical skill, but she could fetch water, hold a basin, or simply sit and listen to the ramblings of a fevered guard. At first, the occupants were terrified, stiff in her presence, but she was persistent and gentle. She asked the healers questions, learned names. She remembered that the young guard with the broken leg was worried about his sister in a distant village, and the next day she had Kalen send a rider to check on her. In the kitchens, she asked the head cook to teach her to make the spiced oatcakes that were Kalen's favorite. She burned the first batch terribly, filling the kitchen with smoke, which broke the ice with a round of nervous, then genuine laughter. She didn't command, she asked, she learned, she thanked. Slowly, the fear in their eyes began to soften into curiosity, then into a hesitant, baffled respect. They saw her exhaustion after her training sessions with Kalen. They saw the simple, kind way she spoke to everyone. They saw the love in Kalen's eyes when he sometimes came to fetch her, a look that was not bewitched, but utterly present and devoted. The whispers didn't stop, but now they had a counterpoint. "She sat with my son while his fever broke. She knew my name. The king smiled when she saw her covered in flour." She was becoming real, and it was her greatest defense. But the shadow players were watching, and they saw her vulnerability not as a weakness of security, but as an opportunity of a different kind. The attack came not in the kitchens or the wards, but in the royal library. Celine often went there in the afternoons to study. It was a place of quiet, usually attended only by old Lord Valerius and a few scribes. One afternoon, as she pored over a history of the Frostfang dynasty, a young scribe she recognized, a quiet, diligent beta named Elric, approached her table. He carried a scroll. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing low, voice trembling, I found this in an old archive. I thought you should see it." He unrolled the scroll on the table before her. It was a genealogy, the royal line of House Thorn. At the very bottom, a recent edition was inked in a hurried, different hand. Kalen Thorn, Alpha King, bound to Celine, formerly of Blackwood, Omega. Next to her name, someone had drawn a crude, mocking sketch of a wilted flower, and beneath it, in stark, angry letters, "Barren, no heir, line ends." The message was clear, cruel, and deeply personal. It wasn't about politics or power anymore. It was a direct stab at the core of her perceived failure, left where she would find it.
It was meant to wound, to make her doubt, to poison her from within. A cold numbness spread through her. The old shame rose like bile. She stared at the word, barren. Elric was watching her, his face pale. Was he the messenger or just the tool? Before she could react, a shadow fell over the table. Kaelin. He must have sensed her distress through the bond. He looked at the scroll, then at her face. His own expression hardened into something deadly. He didn't shout. He picked up the scroll, his hands eerily calm. He looked at Elric. "Who gave you this?" I found it, Your Majesty, on my desk this morning." Elric's terror seemed genuine. Kaelin's gaze swept the library. The few other occupants were frozen. Everyone, out. His voice was low, but it brooked no argument. The library emptied in seconds. When they were alone, Kaelin crushed the scroll in his fist. "This is cowardice, the weapon of those who cannot face you." "It's the truth," Selene whispered, the words scraping her throat. "No." He was before her in an instant, hands on her shoulders. "Listen to me. You are not defined by a womb. You are defined by your heart, your spirit, your courage. This kingdom does not need an heir of my blood. It needs a future built on something stronger than blood. It needs the future you are building. Every life you touch in the wards, every smile you earn in the kitchens, that is your legacy. It is more real, more lasting than any squalling babe could ever be." Tears she hadn't known she was holding back spilled over. He pulled her into his chest, his arms a fortress around her. "They use this because it is the only weapon they think can hurt you. Do not let it. Your worth was never and will never be tied to that." He held her until the shaking stopped. Then he let her go, his golden eyes glowing with a plan. "They want to play with whispers and lies? Then we will answer with a truth so loud it shatters their whispers to dust." Kaelin's plan was bold. He announced a royal progress, a journey not to the keeps of the great alphas, but to the small villages, logging camps, and remote outposts of the Northern Territory, the places often forgotten by the crown, where whispers from the capital arrived distorted and slow. He and the queen would travel together, with a modest but elite guard. "We will show them their king is not bewitched. We will show them their queen is not a monster. We will show them the strength of the bond that unites the throne, and we will listen to their troubles, as a ruler should." Borin and his allies were furious but could not openly oppose a king visiting his own people. They could only plot. The progress was grueling. They traveled by horse and carriage over rough terrain. Selene saw the true north, not the glittering court, but the hard scrabble lives on the edge of the wilderness. She met farmers struggling with blight, hunters fearing rogue wolf attacks, mothers who had lost children to the winter cold. She didn't just observe, she knelt in the dirt to inspect a blighted crop. She asked the hunters about patrol routes. She held the hand of a grieving mother and didn't offer empty platitudes, just shared silence. Kaelin, meanwhile, dispensed king's justice on the spot, settling land disputes, redirecting resources, promising reinforcements for overstretched patrols. He was in his element, the practical, decisive ruler his people needed. And everywhere they went, they were together. The people saw the way the fearsome Alpha King's eyes followed his queen, not with obsession, but with a fierce, proud love. They saw the way she could calm his rising temper with a touch, the way he leaned down to hear her quiet counsel. The bond was their greatest tool. In one village, a paranoid elder accused a neighboring family of stealing sheep through dark magic, whipping the community into a frenzy. Selene, sensing the deep fear beneath the anger, asked Kaelin to let her try. She stood before the two families, the hostile crowd around them. She closed her eyes, reaching for that place of calm, reflective power. She let a soft, silver light emanate from her, not as a display of force, but as a wave of soothing energy, like moonlight on troubled water. She spoke, her voice carrying. "The goddess's light reveals truth, not steals it. It seeks to heal, not harm. Look into your own hearts. Is the enemy truly your neighbor, or is it the fear that the winter has been too long, the stores too thin?" The effect was not miraculous, but it was profound. The aggressive postures slumped. The accused family broke down in tears of frustration. The real issue, a dispute over a collapsed shared fence line, was revealed. Kaelin mediated a solution on the spot. The story spread ahead of them. The Moon Queen sees the truth. The Wolf King delivers justice. They were no longer just king and consort. They were becoming a legend, a partnership. But legends have enemies, and theirs was waiting at the last stop of the progress, the border outpost of Stonewatch, a grim fortress overlooking the disputed lands near the Frostfang territory.
Stonewatch was a functional, grim place, all sharp angles and watchful eyes. The commander, a grizzled veteran named Victor, was loyal to Kaelin, but his men were a mix from various packs, including a contingent from Boren's Frostfang. The welcome was formally correct, but the air was thick with tension. That evening, a feast was held in the drafty great hall of the outpost. Boren himself was notably absent, but his second, a sharp-eyed alpha named Gregor, was present. During the meal, Gregor stood to offer a toast. To the king and his remarkable queen, "May your bond be as fertile as the spring thaw." The insult was veiled in seeming goodwill, but everyone heard the emphasis on fertile. A few snickers came from the Frostfang contingent. Kaelin's grip on his goblet tightened, but Celine placed a gentle hand over his. She stood, raising her own cup. "Thank you, Alpha Gregor. We toast to the fertility of the land, the strength of the people, and the prosperity of all packs under the king's peace. May the coming harvest be abundant for everyone at this table, and for the families they support." Her reply was graceful, turning his petty jab into a wider, generous blessing. The loyalists cheered. Gregor's smile was thin as he drank. Later that night, in the chambers they shared, a stark stone room, Kaelin paced. "I don't like it. This place is a tinderbox. Gregor is up to something." "We leave at dawn," Celine said, trying to soothe him. "Just one night." It was in the deepest part of the night that the trap was sprung. Celine woke to the smell of smoke, not from their fireplace, from under their door. "Kaelin!" She shook him awake. He was alert instantly. The door was locked from the outside. Thick, black smoke poured through the cracks. Shouts and the clash of steel echoed in the corridor outside. Not an attack on their door, but a fight happening just beyond it. "They're not trying to break in," Kaelin snarled, pulling on his boots and sword belt. "They're trying to lock us in and burn us out, or let the smoke do the work." He threw his weight against the heavy oak door. It didn't budge. Celine's heart hammered. The smoke was thickening, burning her eyes and throat. She coughed, panic rising. This wasn't a duel or a poison. This was crude, effective murder. Kaelin roared, shifting partially, claws extending, muscles coiling, and slammed into the door again. The wood splintered, but held. The smoke was now a blinding, choking fog. Think! The bond thrummed with Kaelin's raw power and her own terror. The moon reflects light, but it also reveals what is hidden. An idea, desperate and instinctive, struck her. She wasn't strong enough to break the door, but maybe she didn't need to break it. She ran to the door, ignoring the heat seeping through. She placed her palms flat against the wood, right where the lock would be on the other side. She closed her eyes, reaching not for brute force, but for that reflective, revealing energy. She poured her will into the bond, focusing not on destroying the barrier, but on understanding it. She imagined the metal of the lock, its shape, its mechanism. She pushed a thread of silvery energy through the wood, not to shatter, but to feel. And she felt it. A heavy iron bolt slid home. With her mind's eye, she saw it. "Kaelin!" she choked out. "The bolt! It's here! Strike now!" Understanding flashed in his eyes. He didn't question. He drew back his fully shifted, monstrous claw and, aiming precisely where her hands were, drove it forward with all his strength. The wood around the lock exploded inward in a shower of splinters. The twisted iron bolt clattered to the floor outside. They stumbled out into the corridor, gasping for clean air.
A chaotic battle raged. Victor and his loyal guards were fighting a larger group of warriors wearing Frostfang insignia, mixed with plain leathers, mercenaries. Gregor was at the back, directing the attack on the loyalists, clearly expecting the king and queen to be dead or dying in the room. When Kaelin emerged, smoke wreathed and roaring with fury, the fight froze for a split second. Gregor's eyes went wide with shock. Impossible! Treason! Kaelin's voice was the avalanche, the crashing wave. He didn't wait. He moved, straight for Gregor. What followed was not a fight. It was an execution. Kaelin's rage was a tangible force. He tore through the mercenaries who tried to block his path. When he reached Gregor, the Frostfang Alpha had time to raise his sword. Kaelin shattered it with a blow from his claw, then grabbed Gregor by the throat. "Boren's orders?" he growled, lifting him. Gregor, in his death throes, spat. "The North needs a true bloodline." Kaelin snapped his neck and dropped the body. The remaining traitors, seeing their leader dead and the king a vengeful god, broke and tried to flee. Victor's men cut them down. In the sudden, ringing silence, panting and covered in soot, Kaelin turned to Selene. The fury in his eyes melted into a fear far more terrifying. He crossed the space in 2 strides, pulling her into a crushing embrace, checking her for injuries. You found the lock," he coughed, clinging to him. "The bond, it showed me." Victor approached, kneeling. "Your Majesties, the outpost is secured. The traitors are dead. I failed in my duty. My life is forfeit." Kaelin looked at the loyal commander, then at Selene, safe in his arms. "Your life is yours, Victor, but your outpost is compromised. We leave for the capital immediately, and send a raven to Lord Boren. Tell him his second died in a tragic accident during a failed assassination attempt on his king. Tell him the king and queen are returning, and that the king expects a full explanation." The message was clear. The war in the shadows was over. It was now in the open.
The return to the capital was a somber, swift journey. The attempted assassination at Stonewatch was not something that could be hidden. News flew ahead of them, carried by raven and rumor. The official story was as Kaelin dictated: rogue elements within the Frostfang contingent, possibly in league with mercenaries, had made a failed attempt. But everyone in the know understood. Boren had overplayed his hand and failed spectacularly. The atmosphere in the fortress was electric with tension. The loyalists were outraged and circled tighter. The undecided were terrified, choosing sides. Boren's allies grew quiet, distancing themselves. Kaelin moved with cold, efficient wrath. He bolstered the garrison, rotated guards of questionable loyalty to remote posts, and summoned his most trusted war leaders. The kingdom was on a knife's edge. Selene, meanwhile, was changed. The fire had forged something harder in her. The fear was still there, but it was now a tool, sharpening her senses. She continued her work with the people, but her guard was always present, her awareness heightened. She also intensified her bond work with Kaelin, their connection now a well-honed weapon and shield. One evening, as they reviewed patrol reports, Selene spoke what they both knew. "Boren will not come to give an explanation. He knows you will execute him. He's been gathering his forces. The Frostfang packs are mustering on their border." Kaelin nodded, his face grim. "He's making his play. He thinks the other alphas will rally to him if he frames this as a war to free the kingdom from a bewitched king and a barren witch. We need to stop him before it becomes a full civil war. If the packs fracture, the North will bleed for a generation. Everything you've built." "I know." He ran his hand through his hair, a rare gesture of fatigue. "A direct assault on his mountain passes would be a bloodbath, even if we won, and it would force the other alphas to choose sides openly." "Then we don't meet him where he's strong," Selene said, her mind working. "The progress showed me something. His people in the remote villages,
They're not all loyal. They're afraid, and they're poor, taxed heavily for his war chest. They fear him more than they revere him. A plan began to form in her mind. Audacious and dangerous, it played to her unique strength, not as a warrior, but as a symbol, as a connector. What if, she said slowly, the queen went to them, not with an army, with a message and an offer? Kaelin's head snapped up. Absolutely not. It's suicide. He'd capture you in a heartbeat. He expects an army, she pressed. He expects you. He would never expect me to walk into his territory, into the heart of his discontent, under a flag of parley, not to him, but to his people. Celine. Hear me out, she said, standing, her voice gaining conviction. You will be at the border with the full royal legion, a show of overwhelming force, ready to strike. Boren will be focused on you, his warriors massed to face yours. Meanwhile, I take a small, fast group, Victor, a few of his most stealthy men, and we slip through the backways, the paths the hunters use. We go to the villages in the Frostfang valleys. We show them their queen is not a monster. We tell them their alpha is leading them to slaughter for his own pride, against a king who has only ever kept the peace. We offer them the king's mercy if they lay down their arms. We offer them a future without Boren's heavy taxes and wars. She looked at him, her eyes glowing with a soft, determined light. We fight him not just with steel, Kaelin. We fight him for the loyalty of his own pack. We show the other alphas that this is not a war of liberation, but a war of Boren's ambition against the will of his own people. The room was silent. The plan was insane. It put her in immense danger, but it was also brilliant. It was a move Boren, steeped in traditional alpha thinking, would never anticipate. Kaelin stared at her, a maelstrom of fear, pride, and fury in his eyes. If he catches you, he won't, because you will be the anvil, Kaelin, and I will be the hammer. He'll be looking at you, while I break his support from within. It took him 3 days to agree. 3 days of brutal argument, of contingency planning, of him drilling Victor's team personally. He gave her a dagger made of a strange, silver-dark metal. Moon-forged steel, he said, his voice gruff. It channels bond energy more efficiently. Use it if you have to. And you will wear a locator crystal. If you are in mortal danger, break it. I will come. I will burn every mountain to cinder to find you. The night before she left, he held her so tightly she thought her ribs would crack. There were no words. The bond between them sang with fear, love, and a terrifying shared resolve. The plan unfolded with the precision of a military campaign. Kaelin, astride his massive warhorse, led the Royal Legion to the border plains below the Frostfang passes. The sight was awe-inspiring and terrifying. Rows of armored warriors, banners flying, Kaelin at their head like a god of war. He sent a formal declaration to Boren, "Stand down your forces and submit to royal judgment." Boren's reply was a volley of arrows and a booming laugh from the high walls of his pass fortress. He had the high ground, a narrow pass to defend. He believed he could hold off the king indefinitely. He never saw the shadow moving through his own territory. Celine, dressed in simple, sturdy traveler's clothes, her hair braided tightly back, moved like a ghost with Victor and 5 of his best rangers. They used old game trails, hidden valleys, and the trust of a few hunters' families who remembered the queen's kindness from the progress. The first village they came to, Deepwood, was a pitiful cluster of huts. The people were thin, their eyes hollow. When they recognized the queen, they fell to their knees in terror. "Please," Celine said, her voice gentle but carrying, "do not be afraid. I am not here to bring war to your doorstep. I am here to ask why your alpha is bringing war to you.
She walked among them, she touched a child's thin arm, she listened to an elder talk of how Borin's war tithe had taken their last breeding ewe, their seed grain. She didn't give grand speeches, she gave them a vision. The king on the plains does not want your blood, he wants your loyalty. He offers peace, fair taxes for the protection of the crown, not for the ambition of one alpha. He offers trade, not raids. She let a soft silver light glow around her hands, not to intimidate, but to illuminate her sincerity in the twilight. The goddess's light shines on all her children, not just those in castles. Which future do you choose? Death on a mountain for Borin's pride, or life in a united North? It was slow, fragile work, but it was a seed. They moved to the next village and the next, the story of the Moon Queen walking among them unafraid, offering peace spread like wildfire through the valleys, carried by runners and shepherds. Doubt, that most corrosive of weapons, began to eat at the foundation of Borin's strength. Meanwhile, at the pass, Kalin played his part perfectly. He didn't launch a costly assault, he laid siege. He showed overwhelming force, but held back, a constant, looming threat. He sent messengers through other channels to the alphas of the neighboring packs, presenting evidence of Borin's treason, the failed assassination, and the king's generous terms for peace. He framed Borin as the destabilizer, the breaker of the king's peace. The other alphas, wary of Kalin's army and intrigued by his restraint, held back. They watched. Borin, trapped in his fortress, initially confident, grew frustrated, then confused, then anxious. His scouts reported not rallying support, but whispering dissent in the valleys. His second-in-command was now dead. His warriors, who had expected a glorious battle, grew restless sitting on cold stone walls. The hammer was softening the anvil. The tipping point came at a village called Stone Creek. As Celine spoke in the central square, a contingent of Borin's enforcers arrived, sent to quell the rebellious talk. Their captain, a brute named Rourke, sneered at the small group around the queen. "The Alpha said you might be skulking about, witch, spreading lies." He drew his sword. "You're coming with me." Victor and his rangers moved in front of Celine, weapons drawn, but they were outnumbered 3-1. Celine's heart hammered, but she stepped forward around Victor. She looked Rourke in the eye. "You serve an alpha who burns his own people to feed his pride. The king offers life. What does Borin offer you? A grave on this mountainside?" "Is he offer strength?" Rourke roared. "Not this weakness you peddle." "Is it strength?" Celine asked, her voice dropping yet carrying to every villager watching. "To point your sword at an unarmed Omega? Is it strength to starve your own pack for a war they don't want?" She lifted her chin, the bond mark on her neck glowing faintly. "True strength protects, it builds, it does not destroy its own house. Borin's house is crumbling. Will you bury yourself in the rubble?" She didn't use her power, she used only truth, and she saw it hit home in the eyes of some of Rourke's own men. They looked at the gaunt villagers, at their queen standing fearless, and then at their own captain, whose order now seemed petty and cruel. Rourke, sensing his control slipping, snarled and lunged at her. Celine didn't flinch. She brought up the moon-forged dagger Kalin had given her. She didn't try to match his strength. As he swung, she channeled a burst of silver energy through the blade. It didn't strike him, but it flashed brilliantly, a silent, stunning burst of pure light right before his eyes. Rourke staggered, blinded momentarily. In that second, a rock flew from the crowd, hitting Rourke's helmet with a clang. Then another, and another. The villagers, emboldened, rose up. They had no weapons but stones and tools, but they had numbers and a fury born of long oppression. Rourke's men, shocked and confused, were overwhelmed. The captain himself was dragged down. Panting, Celine looked at the scene. The seed had sprouted into revolt. She turned to the villagers.
The king is at the pass. He will grant amnesty to any warrior who lays down his arms and pledges loyalty to the crown. Carry this message to every warrior you know." The revolt in Stone Creek was the spark. The message spread like a flood through the valleys. Warriors began to desert the pass fortress, slipping away in the night. Boren's army was melting from within. When Kalin received Selene's coded message via a hunter's arrow, "The anvil is ready," he knew it was time. He didn't attack the pass. He simply advanced his army to its very mouth, a silent, immovable wall of steel. And then he called out, his alpha voice amplified by the mountain walls, reaching every defender on the walls. "People of the Frostfang, your alpha had led you to treason. He tried to murder your queen. He steals from your homes to feed his war. Look to your valleys. Your families have chosen peace. Lay down your arms, walk out of the pass, and you will be spared. Follow Boren, and you will die with him for nothing." For a long, tense hour, nothing happened. Then the gates of the pass fortress creaked open, not to charge, but to let out a trickle, then a stream, then a flood of warriors. They threw down their swords and shields at the feet of the Royal Legion and walked, heads bowed, into the custody of the king's guards. Boren was left in his fortress with only a handful of die-hard loyalists, trapped and abandoned. Kalin walked into the pass alone. Selene, having raced with Victor to reunite with the army, arrived just in time to see him emerge from the fortress gates, dragging a broken, raving Boren by the scruff of his neck. The old alpha's eyes were wild. He saw Selene and spat. "Witch, you have poisoned everything." Kalin threw him to the ground at Selene's feet. "The sentence for treason is death. Do you wish to pronounce it, my queen?" All eyes were on her, the victorious army, the surrendered Frostfang warriors, the watching alphas from other packs who had come to witness the end. This was the moment. To show mercy would be weak in the eyes of many. To demand death would be expected. Selene looked down at the defeated alpha, the source of so much pain, so many lies, the man who had tried to burn her alive. The old Selene would have wanted him gone. The queen she had become saw the larger picture. She walked forward and stood over him. Her voice, when she spoke, was clear and carried by the mountain wind.
"Lord Boren, your crimes are many. Treason, attempted regicide, the oppression of your own people." She paused. "Death would be a mercy you do not deserve, and it would make you a martyr for those who still cling to the old, broken ways." She turned to address the crowd. "This war was not fought for conquest. It was fought to preserve the king's peace, to show that no one, not even a great alpha, is above the law of the pack and the law of the crown." She looked back at Boren. "You are stripped of your title, your lands, and your pack. You will spend the rest of your days in the black cells of the capital, with only the ghosts of your ambition for company. Let every alpha who thinks to follow your path look upon your fate. You sought to break the North. Instead, you have shown its strength, the strength of unity." There was a stunned silence, then a roar of approval from the army and the surrendered warriors. It was a punishment worse than death for an alpha, complete and utter nullification. Kalin looked at her, his golden eyes blazing with a pride so fierce it took her breath away. He nodded to the guards, who dragged the sputtering, broken shell of Boren away. The Civil War was over before it truly began. The Frostfang pack was absorbed into the royal domain, its people governed by a royal steward chosen for fairness. The other alphas, seeing the king's might and the queen's cunning mercy, reaffirmed their oaths with a new, genuine fervor. As the army made camp in the conquered pass, Kaelin found Selene looking out over the valleys now bathed in peaceful moonlight. He came to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her, resting his chin on her head. "You were magnificent," he murmured into her hair. She leaned back into his solid warmth. "We did it. Together." "Always," he vowed, "from now until the last moon falls." The return to the capital was a triumph. The story of the Queen's daring mission and the King's decisive victory was told and retold, solidifying their legend. The kingdom entered a profound peace and consolidation. The old prejudices, while not vanished, were pushed to the furthest fringe. The example of the Frostfang, where an alpha's tyranny had been rejected by his own people, served as a powerful lesson. Selene threw herself into the work of rebuilding and integration. She established formal councils that included not just alphas, but respected betas and omegas from various trades. She created royal charters for new towns, fostered interpack trade, and founded a healing academy that incorporated both traditional herbal lore and the careful study of bond energy that she and Kaelin pioneered. Kaelin, freed from the constant threat of civil war, became a different kind of ruler, a builder rather than just an enforcer. He directed his formidable energy towards infrastructure, roads, fortified trade routes, and a standing royal guard that drew from all packs, fostering a sense of shared identity. Their love, forged in fire and tested by betrayal, deepened into an unshakable partnership. The bond was a constant, comforting hum, a private language of looks and touches. He no longer slept on a pallet. They shared the bed, and their nights were filled with a passion that was as much about emotional union as physical desire. He was her sanctuary, and she was her heart. Years passed, seasons turned. The fortress lost its grim, martial edge. Gardens bloomed in the courtyards. Children's laughter echoed in the halls. Orphans they had taken in, children of courtiers, a vibrant new generation growing up in a kingdom where wolfless was not a curse, but simply one way of being. One crisp autumn evening, 5 years after the Frostfang campaign, Selene stood on their battlement. The view was the same, but she was not. She was no longer a broken girl or a fearful queen. She was a woman of power, grace, and quiet confidence. A few silver threads shone in her dark hair. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind. Kaelin rested his chin on her shoulder, his own hair more silver than black now. "You are looking at the horizon again, plotting to annex the southern kingdoms, my love?" She smiled, leaning back. "No, just admiring our world." Below, in the training yard, 2 teenagers sparred. Lyle, an alpha-born orphan now a promising guardsman, and Kira, the wolfless Omega girl Selene had taken under her wing. Kira moved with a fluid, deceptive speed, disarming Lyle with a clever twist before offering him a hand up. He clapped her shoulder with pure respect. "She has your spirit," Kaelin said, voice thick with pride. "She will be whatever she chooses to be," Selene corrected gently. "That is the North we built." He turned her in his arms, his golden eyes softer than she'd ever seen them. "I was a king of stone and shadow before you. I ruled a kingdom, but I did not have a home. You gave me that. You gave this land a heart." She reached up, tracing the old scar on his cheek. "And you gave a ghost a voice. You saw a queen when all I saw was a survivor." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the snow-capped peaks in violet and gold. "They're waiting for you," Kaelin said softly. She nodded. It was the night of the full moon, their tradition. She took his hand and they walked to the great hall. It was no longer a tense councils. It was the people of the fortress. Guards, servants, cooks, children, stable hands. The throne was left empty. In the center of the hall, a shaft of moonlight fell from a high window. Selene stepped into the light. She closed her eyes and reached for the bond, for that well of shared, luminous power. It answered like a beloved partner. The silver light bloomed from within her, soft and ethereal. Her eyes opened, glowing with serene moonlight. Behind her, her spirit wolf shimmered into existence, larger, more defined, a majestic creature of wisdom and peace. Its silent silver gaze swept the hall, touching each person, acknowledging their struggles, their hopes. It offered a blessing of belonging, of pack. From the side, Kaelin watched, his heart full. He was still the Alpha King, the warrior who would burn worlds for her, but he was also just a wolf who had found his mate. He thought he had rescued her. He knew now she had rescued him. When the ritual was done, the light faded. The people surged forward, not as subjects, but as a family, surrounding her with warmth. Later, alone in their chambers by the fire, Selene brushed her hair. Kaelin watched her from the window. "No regrets?" she asked softly, meeting his gaze in the reflection. He turned, a slow, true smile gracing his lips. He walked to her, took the brush, set it aside, and knelt before her, taking her hands, just as he had on that first day in his study. "My only regret," he said, voice a low, sincere vow, "is that I wasted 50 years on a throne of stone when I could have been building a throne of moonlight with you." He leaned in and kissed her, a kiss of equals, of partners, of two souls shattered by life and forged into something stronger and more beautiful than either could have been alone. She was Selene Thorne. She was not wolfless. She was the heart of the wolf. She was not barren. She was the mother of a new age. She was not nothing. She was, and would always be, his everything. And in the heart of the unforgiving north, under the light of the eternal moon, the queen and her king had finally, truly come home.